Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Z Talks with your host, Zaria Musgrove, where I talk about books, movies, and TV shows that relate to history and classic literature. Now, today I will be diving into the movie side of the podcast, and I will be talking about William Tell. Now, I will start off by saying I actually didn't plan to do this movie on the podcast episode today. I had another episode planned that I was going to do today, which you will see in the upcoming weeks because I'm still going to do it, but I actually just had to push it back and do this episode right here because I ended up watching this movie with my dad, and it was amazing. It was amazing. I can tell you right now that this movie is definitely a 4 out of 5 stars for me. It was fast paced, action packed, plot driven. And you know, I love that stuff. And it was so good that it sent me down a research rabbit hole. I know so much random facts about William Tell in Switzerland that I did not know before I started this research. And I have so much random facts that if someone came up to me, I have loads of conversation starters. But I digress. I will just say that this movie, I'll tell you from now my rating and recommendation, solid 4 out of 5 stars. Solid, solid, solid. I just loved it, and I want to tell you guys about it, but I don't want to spoil it for you guys in the intro. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Now, William Tell. This movie is obviously about a man called William Tell. He ends up in a predicament. He ends up in a predicament with higher authority for actually just being a hero and looking out for his fellow brother. Not brother in blood, but brother in arms. Because there's a man that ends up killing a constable who comes to his house to collect taxes. And he has a valid reason for killing this constable, honestly, because the constable comes to his house while he's in the field, so he meets his wife there. And he ends up, trigger warning, sexually assaulting his wife and murdering her. And I would say that's as good as a reason as any to kill a constable because that was diabolical and uncalled for. You could have just collected the taxes and left. So, suffice to say, this man kills the constable and he is on the run because he killed a man of higher authority. Therefore, he is wanted because this is a time period, the 13th century, for reference, where you kill someone, you are also going to be killed because this is an eye for an eye type of time period. So he's on the run and he runs into William Tell and asks him to help him just just for protection and to help him run away from the guys that are seeking him because they're actively his gang of people, the constable's gangs of people is actually chasing him on horseback because this is the time of horseback, guys. And I love a horseback time era. That when it gets to the cars in the time era, I'm like, we just need to go a little bit further back because the chases, they're just not chasing as much. But the chases in this movie, they're chasing because they're on horseback, and you can sense the sense of urgency and immediacy. So William Tell, being a good person, he's like, you know what? I'll do a solid. I'll do you a solid, my fellow Swiss brother, because they are both in Switzerland, and he helps him to run away and to seek protection. But William Tell gets himself in problems because in this time period, he is in central Switzerland in a canton. A canton, for reference, is a smaller political and administrative unit. He is in a canton that is called Uri, which is his hometown. And the political situation in Switzerland right now is a bit jumbled. In Uri, this canton, it's a quasi independent political administrative unit, and it is actually under the Habsburgs. Now, I can't say that I know as much about the Habsburgs that I want to. I just know that they are a German royal family, a royal dynasty that ruled in Austria for a very long time and had lands and holdings in Switzerland. So that is as much as you're going to get out of me about the Habsburgs in this episode, because I have not done as much research on them specifically as I would have liked, but I have gotten some really good recommendations from scholarly works on books that I should read about it. So expect maybe yes next year an episode on the Habsburgs, on a book I've read about them. But for now, that's all I need to know. The canton of Uri is under the Habsburgs, and whilst William Tell is harboring this man, there's a bailiff called Gessler who is, under the charge of the Habsburg dynasty to collect rents and taxes from the Swiss people. And he obviously wants justice for this constable that was killed, and also because he just hates the Swiss. And through him trying to find out who killed the constable, he runs into William Tell, and for the rest of the movie, there is a tussle back and forth between them that leads William Tell to stirring a rebellion among the Swiss people. Now, if that plot sounded on the edge, like really compelling to you, it sounds it looks better than it sounds, because the movie actually does this plot so much justice, and I liked it so much that I actually went down a research rabbit hole, and I will take you down that rabbit hole with me now. So, the first thing that I asked myself when I finished this movie, and even when I was watching it, was, is William Tell a real person? And through doing research, I found out that he's not. He is not a real person, but he is depicting a real life event, because the movie of William Tell and the myth of William Tell actually is supposed to represent and depict the formation of Switzerland in 1291. Because William Tell, he's from the canton of Uri, and Uri in 1291 makes a security defense pact against the Habsburgs in union with two other cantons called, I'm just looking at my Lilo and Stitch notebook to give you guys accurate information. Joins in, Uri joins in with two other cantons called Swiss and Unterwalden. Please forgive me if I did not pronounce that right. But these three cantons joined together in a security defense pact against the Habsburgs, and just to, swear internal peace and to ward off foreign influence. And the story of William Tell is meant to represent that time period and how these three cantons came together in this defense pact. But as I said, through doing my research, I found out that William Tell is not a real person. He's not real, guys. And this is a general consensus and scholarly debate. Now, there were some articles that I saw, some journal articles that I saw that tried to defend the existence of William Tell, but it's generally believed that this whole story is a folklore, because any there's not any mention of him in documents until 1470, and the main event that happens in the story, which is William Tell shooting an apple off the top of his son's head, which I will come to. Don't think I won't get to that. I will come to that. That whole event is not documented until happening till later. It doesn't even happen in the 13th century. It's supposed to be an event that happens later in actual historical evidence. So it's just too much against his existence. And if he even did exist, it wasn't at that time. So we'll just call it a myth. We'll just call him a myth and a folklore. But what is true about the William Tell story, as I said, is the representation of the joining together of these three cantons into a defense pact. And I will lead you into a deeper rabbit hole, which I went to in my research, and just walk you through a little bit of history so that you can get a wider understanding of why these three cantons went into this defense pact. So, Going back in time, Switzerland was under the Holy Roman Empire. And Switzerland at the time, it wasn't unified. They were made up of many cantons, as I said, little administrative and political units, and it was like quasi independent. So they were under the Roman Empire, but they had some semblance of autonomy. But at this time or later on, there became one family that became very, very prominent. And as you can guess it, because I mentioned that before, the family is the Habsburgs. Now, the Habsburgs came to real prominence in 1273 when one of their members, Rudolph the First, became the king of Germany. And when he became king of Germany, the three cantons joined together to kind of withstand his expansionist ideals because the Habsburg Empire was expanding. As I said, they had lands and holdings in Switzerland and they were on an expansionist mindset. They were gaining more territory and land through wars and marriages. And these three cantons were in central Switzerland and they were not really about being fully absorbed and having the full length of their autonomy eroded. So they made the Security and Defense Pact to withstand the newfound power that the Habsburg Empire would have through Rudolph the First because he's the king. So certain things would change in how he would be able to acquire lands. It would become much easier. So they decided to band together. So that was actually the first security defense pact because as I said, that happened in 1273 when Rudolf Habsburg first became king. And then he died in 1291. And that is the year that William Tell, that whole myth is supposed to be taken place. And in 1291, when Rudolf the First died, the three cantons actually made a renewed defense pact in just renewing the first one that they made in 1273. So they renewed the defense pact in 1291 just as a recommitment to keeping the peace internally within these three cantons and to also ward out foreign influence that may come in succession after Rudolph the First because they were like, whoever successor is, we will make sure that foreign influence is kept out of these cantons and that we keep peace within ourselves. So 1291 is actually, I found out through additional research, well, not that much research for this tidbit in the research. I found out that 1291 is actually celebrated as Swiss National Day. That is actually celebrated as the founding of, not the founding, but the start of the Swiss Confederacy, like their the formation of Switzerland, 1291. And they celebrate it every year on August 1st. So it is actually a national holiday. So the whole William Tell folklore and myth is actually really central to their nationalism folklore, and the story is actually really important. And I only found out about it once I watched the movie, but to Swiss folklore and nationalism, really important story, but it is a folklore and a myth. So don't be watching this movie, guys, and being like, William Tell's a real person. Don't do that. One thing that I really liked about this film was that it had so much action packed in the movie. So aside from actually learning a lot, because obviously this film sent me down a research rabbit hole and I learned so much about Switzerland, its its myths, its history, its formation, and also just this really important story that represents so much in just everything Swiss and its founding. Aside from learning all of that, which for me was one of the main reasons that I liked it for the film itself. This film, as I said, is really action packed, and there is a scene in the film that had me on the edge of my seat, and it's actually one of the most important parts of the William Tell folklore, which is when he shot an apple off of the top of his son's head. So Gessler, the bailiff that is just, a royal errand boy collecting taxes. He is commissioned to find who killed the constable. And I told you, he runs into William Tell and he starts suspecting that maybe he is stoking rebellion. And at the time, it's funny because he actually isn't. A lot of people around William Tell at that time are like trying to force him and to turn him to the side of opposing the status quo and trying to fight for Swiss nationalism, but he wants to keep the peace. He's actually not stoking rebellion, so it's funny that Gassler thinks that he is. And in order, I don't know how this logic actually came into his head, but he thought to himself, I am going to make you shoot an arrow off the top of your son's head to prove that you are actually not trying to stoke a rebellion. Now, there's a major plot point that I'm leaving out as to why he actually tried to push him to shoot that apple off of the top of his son's head, but I don't want to spoil the whole film. So for now, I'm just going to take a leap and say that he just had to shoot it because Gessler was being awful, which he was. That is true. So William Tell actually did shoot this arrow off the top of his son's head because he is trained in shooting arrows. He's actually he actually went on a crusade. He's actually a crusader, so he is no foreigner or a first timer to shooting a bow and arrow. So he shoots the arrow off the top of his son's head. And that moment is actually the moment when he decides to stoke a rebellion, which the film depicts so well because it keeps you on the edge of your seat and really keeps the emotions high. And you can see the moment in that whole scene when he decides, you know what, this is the time when I'm actually going to start to do what you're accusing me of, which I wasn't really doing before. And I'm going to do it to defend my family's honor because you're having me disrespect my son because I could kill him if I don't shoot this arrow properly. And I'm going to also protect my people at large because the disrespect that they have for the Swiss is crazy. There's so much stuff that I'm leaving out of the film as to why he got to the point of actually wanting to stoke a rebellion. But once you read it, just come back in the comments and tell me about the hat thing. Because the hat on the pole thing, I thought that was wild. But yeah, there are a lot of things that pushed him to that moment, but the film does a really good job of showing you the moment where he really makes that switch, and the whole film is like that. It's brilliantly made. I personally don't have any qualms with it. Maybe I should just give it 5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 stars. It doesn't take a lot for me to give a film 5 out of 5 stars. It's harder with books, but for me, I love a cinematic experience, and this was a good cinematic experience. So, actually, thoughts and ratings, 5 out of 5 stars. There you go. But as I said in the beginning, this film is not for kids. This film is actually really buddy. It has sexual assault, it features murder. So, whilst I do give this film 5 out of 5 stars and recommend it, I don't recommend it to everyone. If you're going to watch this, I don't recommend that you watch it in the presence of kids. It does have a lot of strong themes and should just be watched by people that are able to take the blood and handle the themes of murder and sexual assault. But besides the age range of people that can watch this, I highly recommend it. It's a great film, plot driven, fast paced. There's not a point in the film where I felt a lull or felt that I wanted to do something else because I wasn't actively watching it. The film really pulls you in and makes you want to watch the whole thing. And also, as I said, a bonus, you get to learn something. Even if it's not something that's a true story, you get to learn more about Switzerland at large. Because as I said, even though William Tell is not a real person, the story behind him and the historical background is true. Not everything is true. Don't take all of the history that is depicted in this film as true and fact, because there are discrepancies. This is a film that was made for dramatization purposes and for entertainment, but the general brushstrokes of what happens in the film historically has some truth to it and lets you learn a lot about the formation of Switzerland. So yeah, that is all I have to say today about William Tell. As I say, highly recommend it, watch it, but be warned, there are some strong themes in it, so watch with caution. But yeah, that was a quick one, but an impactful one. And I hope you learned a little bit more about Switzerland and can go into a party and say a little bit about a random Swiss fact about how it formed and talk about a folklore and a myth. And if that wasn't your cup of tea, I'm sorry. Actually, I don't apologize. I actually love doing this episode. So if that wasn't your cup of tea, I will redirect you to other episodes that I have on the podcast that may be your cup of tea. Maybe you want a different setting, time period, or location, because I do all of it through books, movies, or TV shows on the other episodes. And if none of those are also your fancy, then you can wait another 2 weeks for another episode on Z Talks.